listeners. This is Adrienne. This is How to Survive the End of the World, our podcast on learning from apocalypse with grace, rigor, and curiosity. And I'm just going to introduce you to what you're about to hear, which is the recording of our live podcast taping at Brown University. We were invited to do an event called Reimagining the Future that was sponsored by the LGBTQ Plus Center, Brown Center for Students of Color, the Kogut Institute for Humanities Comparative Literature, the Institute for Transformative Practice, Literary Arts, Office of Campus Life, the Pembroke Center, Sarah Doyle Center for Women and Gender, and the UFI Center, all at Brown University. It was a part of all of their LGBTQ plus programming. And we wanted to go ahead and drop it today because we have a really special guest who joins us on the show that feels really relevant for a Mother's Day release. So we also wanted to say before we get started that we love doing these live shows. We love meeting you. So if you or an institution you're associated with is interested in booking us to come and record live, you can just shoot us an email at howtosurvivepod@gmail.com and let us know what you're thinking. And we wanted to really dedicate this show to everyone out in the world who is involved in any way in the work of mothering. That mothering is a radical work. Mothering is one of the most important things that can be done on this planet to actually keep us connected to the generation before us, keep us connected to the place that we're from, keep us connected to land and to each other. Mothering is really the place where we learn that tie and where we experience or can experience the unconditional love of existence. So we also wanted to send a lot of love and hugs and kisses out to all of our listeners who maybe didn't get the mothering that they deserved and the mothering that they needed, and especially to those listeners of ours who identify as queer in any way. If your parents didn't know what to do with that, just sending you a big hug and and hope that something in this show is healing for you.
I'm like really excited to be Brown at Brown.
Oh, we're Brown Sisters at Brown, y'all.
It feels like everything's come full circle here in Providence.
Everything. I think we both get rejected by Brown?
Yeah.
Yeah, so here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, truly, I was like laughing about this with our friends in the car that this is who I am because I'm such a Sagittarius that when I got my rejection letter from Brown, I was like, what? Okay. I'll just go to Sarah Lawrence then, I guess.
Very close, right?
Yeah.
Pretty close.
It's like geographically.
Spiritually. Okay.
Yeah, but not, I imagine that it's not probably the same as this experience.
I'm sure it's so different and unique what you're living through here. I will say this. I think college is college.
College
I think
is
it's
college.
I'm like, yeah.
There's always people sitting on grass.
Went to school.
Yeah.
So we wanted to talk tonight. We wanted to be in line with what y'all have been working on here, which is really thinking about queer and trans visions of the future and like really imagining a future. And so we thought we could come at this a few different ways. The first way was we want to have a conversation about this current moment, and we have what we think might be a creative science fictional way to do that. The second thing we want to do is we have a special guest here to talk a little bit about queering children, raising queer children. And then the third thing we thought we would do is really ask all of you.
Wait, did y'all know that there was going to be a special guest?
Oh, yeah. There's always a special guest.
Okay.
Well, always. We've only done 3 shows. We've always had one. So.
Yeah.
So there's a special guest. There's a microphone for the special guest.
Yes.
And the special guest knows because they're very special. We had to let them know. But so don't worry. Like you're like, is it me? It's like,
it's not you.
Calm down. It's only you if it's you, right? So, and then the third part of it, I want to go ahead and plant the seed now so that you can be germinating, is we're going to be really asking you all for some concepts of queer and trans visions for the future, and particularly looking to listen to the queer and trans people in this room. What do you know about those visions for the future? So be germinating, and eventually we're going to pour water, and it's going to go great. So does that sound like it'll work for y'all? And then we'll do some Q&A. Or some feels an A, because sometimes you don't have a question. You're just like, I'm feeling feelings. I'm feeling trans. Whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. So
I think that's how the coming out process usually works.
I mean, for me, I was just like, I'm feeling like I'm attracted to everything.
Yeah.
I
must be queer.
I feel it. Mm-hmm. All right. I feel it. I feel it. Okay,
so... I'll just take it from here. So one of the things that we thought we would do in terms of our, what is the most visionary way that we could begin this conversation is to imagine for ourselves that, I'm imagining myself as a student at Brown. I'm sitting on the grass. I'm reading, Hobbes and being like, why am I having to read this?
Yes. That's what I thought too.
Yeah. See? We're all wondering that. Why is anyone still reading that?
Why am I reading
And, and then suddenly from out of the sky comes this like blue orb of light.
Is that me?
It's you floating down. And out of this blue orb of light steps an indescribably beautiful creature. Mm-hmm. And I just know, just in my guts, in my bones, that this is not an earth-based creature. This is like an extraterrestrial creature. And what sound does it make? Mm-hmm. But somehow, because of the technology that this creature has, it has a way of speaking, like making whatever noise it makes, but I can understand what it's saying to me. And what is it saying to me? Oh, you're going to say it your way. Like, what's going on here on Earth in this current political condition and political moment? And, like, should I fuck with it or not? Like, really?
Yeah.
So we thought we would each, like, ask each other this question. Yeah. So you're asking me. Yeah, right. Okay. So trying to imagine how to really describe to an extraterrestrial, like, what has happened here. So what has happened here is that there's a life form on this planet that has lost its ability to relate to the planet itself as a living organism. It's very sad. Yeah. And it means that both that life form, which we call human, is very sad inside. Because it doesn't feel like it has a parent anymore, but it doesn't know that it's supposed to have a parent. It's sort of like both lost the feeling of being parented by the organism of the planet, but it's also lost the memory that the organism is its mother. So it's like, it's hurting the organism. It's like cutting it and digging into it and wounding it. But it's also, every time it does that, it like creates a wound on its own body too. Because everything mirrors everything on the planet. So, yeah, and the planet is starting to have a really hard time like accepting the child. Yeah. And as the planet's trying to sort of figure out like, well, what am I going to do with this child? Does the child need to be here anymore? Do I have to let this child go? So that's how I would explain what's happening.
Hello, listeners. Because we just realized that you're not actually watching us in this moment, I wanted to just explain that in this moment, the alien life form actually leaves Adrian's body and transfers over into Autumn's body. so that the conversation reverses. So that's what's happening.
Oh, wow. Wow. This is amazing. I always wanted to meet you, first of all. You're so cool looking. I love this color. It's like my favorite color in the universe. I'm so glad it exists on other planets. So your question is a really hard one. And the thing that I would layer into what you may already know is that there's not just one child running amok and hurting the planet. It's all these multitudes and multitudes and multitudes of beings who have not only forgotten how to be in relationship to planet, but have forgotten how to be in relationship to each other, and have been trained out of almost every natural impulse we have. So every impulse we have to just love each other, we've been trained and separated from each other and told how that love can go, told to deny all of our natural impulses for it and to try to fit it into these very clean boxes that can be controlled. And all of the control is for, exactly, it's horrible. It's really good. All of the control mechanisms are for something that is called capitalism. It's about how do we, even the word, yeah, you may have to like let it, yeah. It's like basically some people trying to accumulate all of the wealth, all of the resources, and just having everyone else service them and subsist on the bare minimum. And so it's no good, right? And all the governments get constructed to protect this economic approach, and hearts get broken to protect this economic approach, and borders get created to protect this economic approach. And so we are in a very exciting moment where a lot of our species is noticing that these systems don't work, and we're trying to imagine and practice what could work, and both reaching back for what was our original relationship to land and who still remembers that and who's still practicing that, and also reaching forward to how we reconnect ourselves to land, which might be without any of the current borders and any of the current economic systems. And so it's like a heartbreaking, devastating time of apocalypse, but it's also a time of immense possibility and fecundity and richness. That's where we are.
I'm realizing that this alien is nodding its head, but like probably wouldn't.
Would nod the antenna. Yeah, there's your antenna, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
alien liftoff. All right. Do we think this alien would want to fuck with us?
Would you stay if you were the alien? You're like, no. Do you think the alien would take a few of us away? Right? So the other piece of it. Thank you. Be the alien.
We understood what you were saying.
It's so good. I love playing alien games because it's always interesting to me, like, how I think of aliens still. Like, I'm like, what does an alien look like? And which aspects of humanoid features am I still like, you must still have this, right? Like the fact that we have to make noise to communicate at all. I'm like, probably not. Like, 'cause I feel like if we didn't live in the society we live in, we would be pretty far along on telepathy by now. But because we live in the society we live in where it's like, no, everything has to be moved out of you and made into something consumable. So now it's like I use my phone in a near telepathic way, but I'm like, if I didn't have the phone and we hadn't developed that, I'm sure we would have figured out other ways. And like, I feel what's going on with you all the time. I know you feel what's going on with me all the time. I think we'd be there. So,
well, I often think too about in terms of just like the idea of making contact.
Yes.
And would we even be able to like recognize like alien life?
Yeah.
I mean, are we able to recognize it now when it's among us?
Octopuses are here right now.
Like cephalopods and stuff. But y'all have seen the science about, I'm sure you've seen the science about this because you are students. Right? That.
What y'all know about an octopus?
Look up cephalopods, alien life form. It's fascinating. They might be aliens. or evolved from aliens.
Yeah, well, there's like a rebel band of scientists.
Right.
Which is one of my favorite things when
That's
you
a
read an
good
article
phrase.
and they're like, there's a rebel band of scientists. They don't say rebel band. They say like a small group, but I know they're rebels.
Right.
That are like, we are up in here realizing that like the basic formative materials of octopuses landed from someplace else a long time ago and then co-developed alongside of us.
Right.
Which is both exciting and kind of sad to me because I always love the idea that like at some point we were all like just me
We
and
could still totally.
it could be both and,
Yeah.
right?
We don't. The future is dark.
Science. Why not? Yeah.
But what I was going to say is just this idea of like, would we be able to actually recognize and be able to actually encounter other life? And
Yes.
I don't know if y'all remember that movie Contact, Jodie Foster and Matthew
How could we ever forget Jodie Foster in space?
It's one of my favorite science fiction movies ever. But one of the things I love about it is that when she finally encounters this alien life form, it projects something that she can actually understand
Yes.
in order for it to be able to communicate to her inside the encounter.
Is it wrong to give a spoiler for a movie that's been out for 20-something
No.
years?
No.
So it projects itself as her father.
As her father,
Right?
yeah.
And then has a conversation with her as her father, which I just think is so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have to say, I had this experience yesterday that was just like Contact, where I traveled through space. No, I had this, I landed in Providence yesterday, and I got off the plane, and I got into my Lyft, and immediately the Lyft driver was like, something was special about this guy. He's like this beardy, kind of fuzzy dude, and fuzzy beardy guy, you know? So you got the image, right? And
That's very specific.
and he was like, "How was your flight?" And I was like, "It was very turbulent, you know, coming down." And it felt like we were moving through layers of rain and turbulence. So it was like raining. And he was like, "I'm actually a pilot, and I do like recreational flying." And he started going down this whole thing around how climate change has really impacted flying. But then he took sort of a redirect and went in like God direction, right? Because he was like, you know, I was like, how do we get over there, right? Talking about flying, space, air, God. I don't know. It just like somehow I still can't remember like how did he get over there, but
He was going to go there.
he was. That's what it was.
That's how
I
he
was
got
like,
over
do you know
there.
how some, okay, so I think some people drive Lyft specifically as an evangelical move. Like I think they're just sort of like, get in the car, I'm just going to have a little gospel going, just warm you up, just kind of see what happens. You hear that, you know, but it's not like overt gospel. It's not like Amazing Grace. It's sort of like, it sounds like pop, and they're like, no, Jesus, pop.
Right.
Anyway,
Jesus.
so all of that was happening layers, but then he got overt, and he was like, you know, I talk to God every day, right? And I was like, I felt my barrier come up in me that was like, are you trying to evangelize me, right? Because I'm 40. I already have like made some decisions about all this stuff. But then I softened. I felt like, I have my headphones off. I committed to being in this conversation for the next 7 minutes, so let's do it.
Beautiful.
And so I softened, and then I was like,
Good noticing.
Thank you. So I actually was like, I talk to God every day too in my own way, right? Because I'm like, the way I do it is I talk to the tarot, and I talk to the universe, and I talk to ants, and I hug trees and stuff like that. But to me, it's very much that same being in touch with the divine channel of life. So I was like, yeah, you and me, we do the same thing, brother. And then he kept talking about it. As he was talking about it, I was suddenly struck with, oh, this is my grandfather. And in a very precise way, like he started talking about the 7,000 promises. You remember that little book that Papa gave to everyone?
Yes.
And I just was like suddenly, like I could barely not cry. Like I was just like, oh God. And he's been gone now for a while, and there was no one in the world like my grandfather. Like he was just one of these, he just had, like when I think of him, it's always his hands first, but he just had these like massive working the land, working with horses, working with dogs kind of hands, and was an evangelical man. And like everyone he met, he was just like, I want to make sure your soul is attended to, and your soul is attended to.
But also was like,
But
in
he was
addition
chill.
to that, he was chill, but was also like one of the most deeply curious people that I've ever known.
Exactly.
So actually like listen deeply in a way that I think actually, for me at least, contributed to like the path that I feel like I ended up on in terms of the work that I do. Because I remember being like, I want to be able to ask questions like that. I want to be able to listen like that, even from being in a place of being firmly rooted in my belief system, to still be able to ask questions like that.
Exactly.
Like, that is an uncanny ability.
So it was like that. Like, it was just like sitting there all of a sudden, like, he's asking good questions and he's listening and he's telling me about these things. And I was moved. And I was like, oh, right, like, that was a visit.
Yes.
And then, and I was like I was like, I want to jump and hug him getting out of the car. And I was like,
you're like, let me just
calm it down, girl. He don't know that he's your papa. He just knows that he's living his life. So good. So that's the state of things. And that's the state of our grandpa. And now I think it's time for our guest to come on up and have a conversation. So the next person who's going to approach the stage is very important to us, and is someone who has done a lot of great work when it comes to raising queers. It's our mom.
It's our mom. Oh!
All right. So
I've never done this.
I know. You
She
never
lies.
podcast until you do.
I never really have.
You never podcast until you do. So let's turn and face you.
Great. Yeah,
So
we're gonna turn
so
towards you.
I
So we
got
just
here.
we just sprung this on my mom today after she had arrived
literally.
because we thought she might not come if we asked her too early. Because she managed to raise people who enjoy being on stages and talking, but that's not like her jam.
No.
But
You do like being in charge, though.
I do.
yeah,
Yeah.
Sagittarians,
Behind
this
the
whole
scenes.
crew right here.
Yeah.
So,
Scenes.
any Sagittarians in the house?
Any Sagittarians in
These
the
are your
house?
people. These are your fire people.
We're such good managers of others.
So
This is pretty cool. I like it.
one of you can get used to it. We're trying to do it with the whole family. We did a live show in Minnesota recently, and for that show we had Autumn's children. They took the stage and they basically did their own whole podcast.
They did. Siobhan and Murray did their own
they did
show
their own.
after our show was over.
Well, actually, they
but
did
also,
some before.
That's true.
And they really approached it as our part was the let's just get through the middle. But theirs was the important beginning and end, and they were a little disappointed that the audience didn't kind of respond the same exact
But
way.
then Finn was the audience participant. He was
Heckler?
like heckling me the entire show.
it
It was amazing.
and he was brilliantly heckling. Like
Yeah.
he was like, "That's not how the prison industrial complex works." I was like,
Yeah, just like,
"Okay, come through, child."
Yeah.
Anyway, so, but with our mother up here,
Our mother.
our mother. So we're talking about queer and trans visions of the future, and one of the things we were asking was sort of like, how did we get to be queer and queer people,
Yeah.
queer people who have a lot of sex with trans people, but not
Right.
actually trans
Right.
ourselves. It's different.
Yeah.
Okay, it's really different.
It is.
But it does open your
Don't
mind,
get
I will
it
say.
twisted.
Don't get it twisted. Or two,
Yeah.
if you like that kind of thing. Okay, sorry, Mom's here. So we are talking about...
She's very accepting of us.
As you'll see. So we were like, how do you actually raise queer and trans future, right? Like what is the kind of parenting modality that actually works to create open space and Tinder space for people to figure out who they are and become that and keep becoming that? And I'll say that I feel like I've come out to you many times. I feel like I came out to you probably earlier today. I feel like I'm always, I feel like first, my memory of it. So I'll say,
You both did.
yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I feel like I know. Well, with mine, I feel like I'm always coming out because I'm like, I'll tell these two little funny stories. So, and then you can
And then
challenge.
you should definitely ask her a question.
Yeah,
She's the
no.
guest.
It's mostly this is about my feelings about being a queer person who was well raised, but is my memory of coming out to you first is the first time I'm like, oh yeah, I came out to you was when we were in the water. My parents were stationed. My dad was in the military for 30 years, so we were stationed in the Marshall Islands, and we were down there. I had been having breakdowns of doing all my kinds of stuff in life, and then drugs. Oh yeah, I came out to you about. I was like, Mom, I was doing drugs. Actually, I don't even know if I told you I was high all the time. You would just be like, I think you need to go get some more sleep. Anyway, so, but I was like, I slept with my friend, and you were like, oh, well, that sounds interesting. How did did you enjoy it? And like, you didn't really skip too much of a beat. Like, you were just sort of like, all right, well, how was that for you? Kind of like that energy. And I was like, yeah, it was kind of cool. I think I like it better than anything else I ever did. It was great. and so that's one side of coming out. I think it's on already. And then the other side is when I had my ectopic pregnancy. I called you. First I called like, my appendix has burst. It's not funny, but it's funny because it's me. I called and I was like, my appendix has burst. I think. I'm in the hospital. I'm in the most pain I've ever been in my life. And at that point, the hospital had asked me like 20 times, any chance that you're pregnant? I was like, no. I only had sex with a guy that like one time. We used Plan B. Like, it's all good. I had what seemed like a period. Like, it's all good. I'm not pregnant, right? And they're like, any chance? And I was like, no. And I'm also really tired of you talking about the wrong things. I know myself. I'm having an appendix burst. I need you to figure this out. Focus.
Quote of the night is, I'm having an appendix burst.
I'm having an appendix burst. Okay? Because that was a lot of pain. I couldn't do coherence, right? I was just like, focus, right? So then they came back in and they were like, unfortunately, even though you know yourself so well and you're a black witch and all that, somehow you still are having a pregnancy. And so I had to call my mom and be like, hey, I'm pregnant, And so she tells my dad, Adrian's pregnant. And my dad, this is the other role you've always played, is like helping with dad. Well, dad's like, so now she's back to guys? Anyway, to me this was hilarious, but I was just like, my dad's understanding of queer is like, so then that's girls. That's,
right.
And it's just very much like, no, it's everything. I like everything. I like everything. I would probably like the alien we talked to earlier. I like everything. So I want to ask you, what was your memory of that? Because I came out maybe a decade or so before I think you did. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I remember it differently.
Yeah.
I do. I remember it differently. No, I do remember that.
That happened.
I do remember that. That did happen. But I remember wondering when you were going to tell me.
Oh.
Yeah.
When did you know?
I'd known for a while. Mm-hmm. I think like most parents.
Mm-hmm.
I'd known for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember saying, Adrian, is there anything you want to tell me? Because I am the daughter of that curious grandfather.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. And
yeah.
I just wanted to make sure you were okay. Mm-hmm. And you knew it was okay and safe. And that was my job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I look back, I don't really know how I did. I just know that I loved you, and I love you, and that's all that's really required, right?
Yeah. I think so. Right? Underneath it all, yes. Well, and I think it was putting the in unconditional, right? Because it really felt like, oh, I really need to tell you this,
right.
I will say the way, you don't know how you did, I will say you did so good. Because I kept coming back, right? I was like, guess what?
Yeah.
There's
now
more.
This. Hey, and I'm also reading her book, Pleasure Activism, so there are a few things I'm learning. I'm like, I don't know if I can read this chapter.
And I was like, you could skip the whole first 200 pages.
No,
it's great.
I love.
No, actually, I want you to get it too.
I love all of you.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I know.
I love all of you.
What about this one? When she came out, was it a surprise?
No.
Really? See,
I wasn't surprised either,
The interesting
girl.
thing in my journey is that,
It's so different.
I was in a, 16-year-long, or at the point that I guess I came out, I was maybe like 13, 14 years into a mostly monogamous relationship with a cis man. And so I'm very curious about like how that was received.
I think it was such a transition or conversations that we would have that I knew that your attraction was beyond, it wasn't just contained to, I'm only in love with this person because they're a man or any of that. And that's sort of the way I read you,
Yeah.
is you were more fluid.
I like
I mean,
that.
you're more fluid, right?
And
you're
I remember-
You're definitely fluid.
Yeah.
Very fluid. You know.
I remember Dad similarly having a hilarious response of like, well, I knew when you bought that Subaru that something was up.
I know. He was like, no straight woman would buy that Subaru
And I was
station
like,
wagon.
is that a thing? And he was like, yes, it's a thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, how do you know that? And I don't know that.
No. We work for an insurance company. We work for an insurance company, and we have a same-sex couple that comes in frequently to visit us, and they say, oh, well, of course we have a Subaru. It's a thing.
Yeah.
Well, and I also want to give you props because I feel like you've really helped Dad come along in this,
he's
because
doing
Dad
great.
was definitely in the more like, I don't get it. I feel like Dad had, there's so many quotes, like someday I got to write these all down, but like there's, and if any of you have parents, you may have heard some of these of like, well, why would anyone choose to do that, right? It seems like it's going to be so hard, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, not choosing, having, must have, that kind, must. And then I remember having a conversation, actually the night before he had his heart attack, I remember this, and I was like, I think this may have given him his heart attack, but no, right?
No, that was the...
But I had that moment where we were talking, I think it was around Pride or around something, he was like, why do people have to be so like,
Out there.
so gay, right? It's like so out there.
So out there.
So out there, right? And he's a military man. He's like, we get in here and we just live our lives like, we go right here. And it was just such a thing to talk about it in terms of like Black power and queer power, and just being like, when you have been overly contained and made to shrink for so long, when you burst out, you got to burst really big, You may settle into something else that's a little like more, just a little soft queer, a little soft bitch, but first you got to go like, I'm going the whole big zam, that's how when I came out, I was like, where is the march? Can I stand in the middle of the street? Do you notice like this is sheer? I shaved what can I shave? That's not my legs or my armpits. It was just like, right? But it was such a beautiful moment. But I feel like you've worked with Dad so beautifully in bringing him along, such that now people come from like all over, same-sex couples come from like all over because they want y'all's support, because they know that they can be safe and loved and listened to in your office. Yeah. Are you queer?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm definitely.
I was like, just in case.
I'm definitely into your dad, and but
He's so into you too. You guys are so cute.
And I do think though that our journey.
Yeah.
I used to wonder, because this is 20 years.
Yeah.
And things have changed a lot.
Yeah.
In 20 years. But I got married to your father over 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And my journey was like, I could have made a different choice.
Yeah.
But then I couldn't have made a different choice.
No.
The choice I made was my life.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's what
in
I
case
want.
you didn't notice, our dad's Black, and and you guys, it really was. There was so much risk. I wonder, do you feel like taking those risks helped you?
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Helped you. I was like, family talk. We need to translate.
Oh, yes.
Helped you. Helped you basically be available to and be open to us being queer, us moving outside of whatever traditional.
To be whomever you want to be, and however you want to, go through your life.
Yeah.
Is to love you unconditionally.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Because, I feel like you and Dad in that risk. So just a little briefly about their love story.
It's such a love story.
Just that, they met, they began dating and eloped, married within 3 months.
And they're still together.
And they're still together over
and
40
they like
years
each
later.
other. Like it's
And a lot of the swiftness of that, right, was really about recognizing, right, as soon as people find out, they will do everything possible to tear us apart.
They would try to
but
stop
we
us.
live in
deep South Christian territory, they will respect the bond of marriage.
Yeah.
So I'm going to marry that man.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we got the heck out of Dodge.
Yeah.
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 You're like,
And, yeah.
everything must go.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
leave this country.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm glad I did okay.
I'm glad you did.
You know, I did okay. It's wonderful. You guys did okay.
I always tell people, I'm like, if you like me, it's because of her.
Yeah.
It could have been a lot of other ways.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Mama. Love you.
Okay, there.
Okay. We love you.
Did you hear that? You could get down to that phone charge.
You
Just
could,
me.
apparently.
I'm like, if it has a slight sound, I can twerk to it.
I
these
love that
days.
you're on your phone right now.
Well, I'm pulling up what we're doing next because I can't remember. All right. Oh, time travel. Okay. So we've gone to space.
Well, actually, before we do that,
Oh, yeah.
I want to say a little something about queer and trans parenting right now,
oh my God, you're a parent.
right? Well, just that, like, this question of, like, queer and trans visions of the future, for me, it feels really interesting as someone who's, like, I'm parenting 3 children, one of whom, my oldest, came out as non-binary a few years ago, is now 10.
But can we just say the sweetness of it?
Yeah.
Like, so this child overheard Autumn talking about non-binary things, like in a car or something.
Well, so here's how it happened.
I was like,
I'm going to tell you a story.
I was like, tell the story because it's so
So
sweet.
I had been working with some queer and trans young people in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, and was reviewing a video of one of the trans youth, or one of the youth who identified as non-binary, explaining their gender identity. And Finn kind of like floated in and out of the room a few times while the video was playing. And I'll say too that as the person who's been parenting Finn's entire life, I've known since Finn was 3 that Finn does like not didn't feel like, he still goes by he, him pronouns, but didn't feel like he was either a boy or a girl. So he was like floating in and out of the room. And then a few weeks later, he was having a sleepover at his other grandmother's house and was like lying next to her in bed and was kind of lying awake in the middle of the night. He's kind of a jittery kid. And he like turned to his other grandmother, she goes by Nona, and he was like, Nona, I think I'm a binary person. And she didn't know what he was talking about, right? She was just like, but she had a good response. She was like, I'm sure that's fine. And then the next morning, when my partner and I went to pick up the kids, she like pulled us aside and she was like, I just want to flag this for you. I don't know what it means. And I was like, oh, I know what it means. And it was so beautiful because it was like Finn, it was like watching that process of like, before something has a name and then like once you acquire language for it, how different, he settled into this, the truth of himself in a way that was really different after he acquired some language. And then he was like, now he's out there just educating people all the time. So like, we had this hilarious experience last summer at the lake where he's like out there playing with this group of like, a group of boys who are being very like, we are masculine. We're at the lake. And he's got, this is before he cut his hair off, so he's got his long hair and he's like, he's like throwing a ball back and forth with this group of boys, and like one of the boys was like, your hair is so long, like, what even are you? And Finn's like, I'm non-binary, and I bet you don't even know what that means.
At which point we're like, standing ovation. Like,
it's
doing
like
okay.
it's those moments where you're like, you're really parenting well. But the thing I was going to share about all of this is that like watching the clarity with which Finn moves through the world inside himself. And now my youngest, Mairead, who's 6, is also starting to identify as non-binary. And there's like a real clarity in them that, for me, it has offered space for me to recognize that, like, there's a way that I can't imagine. I can't imagine what the future is that they're about to create, because they're going to be creating it inside of a freedom that I didn't know, right? And which isn't to say that, like, I'm finding my way to freedom in, like, new and different ways every day as I, like, continue developing as a person. But there's a kind of freedom that they are experiencing. And I did experience this kind of freedom in my identity as a mixed race person, again, to the credit of our mom and our dad, who, you know, we were coming up at a time when it was still so unnerving to white people that mixed people existed. And so, you know, I was continuously being interrogated on my racial identity as a child, and our parents were deeply protective of the fact that no one could tell us what our racial identity was, even them. Like, my mom would say, even I cannot tell you, even your dad cannot tell you how you are going to identify racially, and no one else can tell you that. It is completely up to you, right? And so I got to grow up inside of that freedom, and now my kids are getting to grow up inside this other type of freedom that I don't know, and that makes me feel deeply humble.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I think I just want to offer that you have been such a ferocious teacher and protector and, like, holder of that dragon mother, you know? Because it does feel like...
I will yell at a person.
Yes, that's what it is, right?
I did yell in the face of one of their school principals.
I think it takes that kind of parenting to protect a future that we can't imagine, right?
Yes.
I think it takes exactly that kind of parenting. Because when I think about the number of times that I was experiencing racism or I was experiencing some kind of oppression as a kid, and Mom, I feel like you never flinched about taking our sides on stuff. And so we would come in, you know, I had that geometry teacher who tried to fail me, you know, and put me in the back of the class, all this stuff. And she would just come in and be like, mostly, you're probably wrong, right? My kid doesn't lie to me. She doesn't come up with shit, so you're fucking up. And, like, every time any of us would come in and bring something, she would just be like, nope. I need to know how you're fucking up with my child, and I need you to, not that language, of course, but, like, I need to know how you're going to come correct and get better, because my child deserves for you to be better. And I feel like you actually practice that so much with our kids, right? That's how I feel, okay? I also feel like a queer influencer in the family.
I'm just totally their queer influencer.
I'm just sort of like, anybody need their nails painted again? Right. You know, but I do feel like that protective device of what it looks like, because I feel like parents often miss all the things around what it is to be queer and young, or to be different and young at all. So when you get calls from teachers about the kids acting out, I feel like so quickly you're like, what is at the root system? Because my child is not just acting out for no reason. Oh, yeah. They're acting out. Did they get called something? Did they get scared? Did they, you know, like, what happened to produce this result? And that, to me, that kind of attentive parenting is actually what produces the safety, you know, the sort of, oh, I know I'm in a container where even if there's people trying to attack my very existence, there's also a container of someone who is saying, first you were in this womb, now you're in this womb, you're my child, I am holding this for you, and still, you still get to germinate. And I still feel like that. I'm like, I still feel like I get to grow. Yeah. And I think your kids are still like that. Right,
because that unconditional love experience, if you have it, it doesn't ever go away. You don't stop experiencing it. And I think that this might be an interesting place for us to segue into this, like, time traveling into the future. Segue.
I was like, can we get our segues? And actually, like, remember when that was going to be the future?
Right. Ugh, what a nerdy future. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But anyway.
It's great.
But I feel like, you know, one of the, you know, tuning back into what you were talking about when you were introducing the current conditions to our alien friend or / potential lover for you, that, you know.
I've got a crush.
That we have a need to create conditions in which we're learning how to, like, generate and extend the experience of unconditional love beyond our family relationships.
That's right.
Knowing that for many people, they don't even get that experience inside their family relationships.
That's right.
But it's like, how do we actually be able to generate, like, is it a skill we can practice to love unconditionally beyond the scope of who we believe ourselves to be responsible for?
I love that. I love that. That is a great segue. So, can everybody drive your Segways? No, you're just like, we're not. Has anyone in this room ever actually been on a Segway?
Yes, we've got a couple. Okay.
We've got a few. Is it cool? Does it feel fun to ride? Like, it's cool. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Maybe it's cool. It's just like because of who's been using them in my community.
Right. My only association with
like,
Segways is Arrested
Mall
Development.
cops. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just mall cops and Arrested Development.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's what we want to do with some time travel. Are y'all down? Yeah?
Here we go.
Okay. So close your eyes and drop into your own soma, your own system, your own body, and really feel for, I'm in this present moment, 2019, April, Brown University. And I want you to just sort of do a checking in for yourself of like, in this moment, do I feel like queer and trans people are safe in the world? Right? Just sort of be like, do I feel that? And I'm not going to tell you a time to go to, but I'm going to say to travel yourself as far into the future as you need to go in order to be in a place where you know that queer and trans people are safe. So you're journeying out there, you're journeying ahead, going in the cycle of time. Maybe the cycle goes all the way to some history. It's nonlinear. But you're in a place now where you know that queer and trans people are safe, and I want you to like look around in that place. Look around in that place. What does it look like? What does it feel like? How does housing work? Where do queer and trans people live that helps them so that they're safe? How does justice work? When there's harm in the community, how does it get handled in a way that queer and trans people get to be safe and protected and have their harms addressed? Our harms addressed. What is the fashion? Is it something you can tell? Is queer and trans still something we aim to visibilize in some ways? Is it something we aim to hide? Does it not even matter? It's just ubiquitous. No matter what you wear, you're safe. What does it look like?
Are we wearing clothes at all?
Are we wearing clothes? Oh my God, I love that question. Do queer and trans people even need clothes in this future? Or are we on the beach? Okay, sorry, my vision, I didn't mean to flood yours. Your vision, back to yours. What do families look like? What does a queer and trans family look like that's totally safe? And you can, if there's any other things you're like, and there's also this. This is what we eat. This is the music we're listening to. This is how we make decisions. Are there borders? Is there a government? All right. So in your little place where you are, just take a snapshot. If you can see a calendar, look around and see if you can see a calendar. Like, is there a calendar? Is there a sense of when we are? Just note it if you can. If that's not clear, don't worry about it. And then bringing all those details as if you're in a time travel bag in your mind, just tuck those details into that time travel bag because you're about to travel. What do you want to bring back? And then gently, slowly, you're going to open your eyes, travel back to 2019, April, Brown University. And we are very excited to hear what we can find out from the future. So we're going to ask folks to come down here. There's going to be a microphone there. Oh, actually, no. Can we bring the microphone to people? Okay, we'll bring the microphone as close as we can to you. So if you're down to share, and particularly here, we want to hear from queer and trans people. It's great if other people also have visions of this, and you get to hear ours and hear if they go. But we'd love to hear from some queer and or trans folks in the room about some of the visions you saw. You just raise your hand if you have one that you'd be down to share.
Things I imagined.
I saw things
I imagined. We're just gonna sing until you.
Saw things I imagined. I saw things
I
I
imagined.
imagined.
Excellent. Well done.
Hello. So my name is Ryan. I did undergraduate, graduate, and I'm a current staff member of this institution. So that's
Hey.
been a very
Okay.
interesting progression. I use they and she pronouns. I've been on estrogen for close to like 2 years now. So
Okay.
Congratulations.
when I think about the apocalypse, I think a lot about like what's going to happen to like gender affirming care for like
Yes.
trans and intersex folks and like everyone who relies on like hormone therapies and stuff like that. And, like, so I'm thinking about a future in which like anyone can have holistic gender affirming care just kind of like programmed into their day-to-day lives, that like your pediatrician is on top of it. They're asking you the right questions, like how do you feel in your body? Do you need anything? What does medical care look like in the future? Like, do we have doctors, or like
Yeah.
does everyone have that knowledge kind of like taught to them as part of school? Like, you know how to take care of your body and like come in and, I don't know, ask those questions for yourself. Like, you are your own WebMD, but like, you know what's up, and like it's not misinformation. You're like, I know about my body and I know what I need.
Awesome.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Missives from the future. Anyone else?
Hello.
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 Hi, my name is Nadia. I go to Brown and RISD. Yeah, in terms of thinking about like what families would look like, I thought about one of my good friends, Ute, and one of the things we talk about is like really wanting to have like communal family structures, like when we're older, especially amongst our queer friends. So how it would be like really cool if like we just had like a clan of aunties that like collectively raised our children, rather than like having necessarily like monogamous two people pairings that are like raising our families, and instead like understanding love as like beyond just like our partners, but also extending to our friends, and allowing that to like extend into our parenting structures.
How many people in here are already part of a clan of aunties? Yes. That's so exciting. Sorry. Or whatever. I feel like that we need a word like nibblings. So we have the nibblings word for children of your sibling, where it's like you're not gendering them, and I feel like we need a word that's like lonties, or I don't know, something. It doesn't exist yet, so I can't say it, but
Non-tees?
crunkle. Ooh, crunkle's nice. Crunkle's nice. Okay. Anyone else? Vision? You want to share? Hi. Hi, honey. It's good to see you. You have a vision?
All right.
So the thing that I thought about was that in order for us to be safe, we would have to defeat capitalism. Back to what you said.
Of course.
And this is not really a bummer to me, because I think it's possible. And I think actually queer folks are going to be the folks who lead the fight to defeat capitalism.
Agreed.
We already have so many alternative economic and ways of taking care of one another.
Yeah.
And to you, it always reminds me of the Ursula Le Guin quote, that we may think capitalism is inevitable, but so did the divine right of kings.
Yes.
And it's human-made. So in the future, when we have defeated capitalism,
Yes.
our families will look like places where the sense of family that we feel amongst queer and trans folks is extended into our blood relatives, extended into everyone. And we have self-determination and what that means, and self-determination of our housing. Where we live is amongst people who love and care for us and with us consistently, because that's the way that we relate to human beings, instead of from a mode of scarcity.
I love it.
Thank you.
I want to go to there. Thank you.
It is inevitable.
It is inevitable. Sometimes that's the only thing that gives me hope is I'm like, this shit gotta fall down. It's inevitable.
And we talk about this I mean, I feel like you and I have been talking about this increasingly, that realizing that like, even inside how desperate the circumstances feel right now, it is our communities that are the most prepared actually for how to navigate what is about to happen.
Exactly.
And that's both a blessing but also a burden, I think, to know that like, because we are already surviving on the margins, because we are already having to create these networks of care, networks of support that aren't reliant on the system as it functions, there's going to be a lot of people who need our skills.
Yeah.
Right? When things do start to collapse. And the thing that I think we're not prepared for is how, and our movement particularly is not prepared for, how are we going to receive all of that like need and want to survive from folks who haven't been in the work in the way that we've been in it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so far, our movement is demonstrating that it's really struggling to accept people who are just kind of figuring out that things are a problem.
We're like, first of all, you're late. Second, your feminist analysis is like completely a mess. Third
Exactly.
of all, you use the wrong pronouns. Fourth of
Right,
all,
it's just
why
like,
are you here?
Okay. Yes, they did not
Yes.
show up perfectly, but
But I always tell people, I'm like, neither did you at first.
exactly. Stop it.
Come through now.
Come through.
We're
Okay.
all suffering. Anyway,
Other visions? Movement moments with Adrian and Adam.
We've got one right here in front of the camera.
Oh,
Camera.
we've
Oh,
got-
the other.
So I was thinking a little bit about clothing or lack of clothing.
Yes. Thank you for thinking of that.
Accoutrement.
Fashion.
Fashion.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if anyone here has been to, I got really excited about going to Fluid, this store in New York City that's supposedly the first like gender neutral clothing store, Fluid with a PH. But wait.
But wait.
So they do really important stuff in the community, but like everything in that store to me when I went in there looked like a potato sack.
That part.
Oh no.
This is, yeah.
And so, like, what I imagine is celebration of, but not fetishizing, combinations of masculinity, quote unquote masculinity and femininity, right? Like, just so much different choices, right, around celebration of aesthetics.
Yeah.
That is
I
not
love that.
fetishizing, right? If there is, you know, because this is way farther in the future, right?
I love that.
Those are some of the things that I was thinking about as far as clothing, and not potato sacks.
I love that, because I was just thinking of like, we're all in Game of Thrones gear, like I'm wearing the like Sansa, like season 8 Sansa with the leather and the chain situation. I'm like, I need that outfit so badly. Don't worry, it was not a spoiler.
I don't want to yuck
If
your
you've seen
yum.
any pictures of it, you've seen Sansa in the leather.
Sansa's just wearing clothes.
It's not a spoiler.
in pictures.
I
Okay?
see you being like, no.
You're like,
don't you fuck up my life.
it's okay, y'all.
That's it. That's the last thing I'll say. Yeah.
I just want to say too. I want to say that I think this is a really big tie into socialism. We'll switch soon.
Yeah,
But into the reason why people resist socialism so deeply, right?
Is the potato sacks?
And I was talking about this earlier. Yes, because when I ask people, I'm like, so you want everyone to have health care, everyone to have homes? Yes, I want that. You want everyone to have all these things, education, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yes, so you're a socialist, right? And people are like, oh, no. And then when I'm like, why not? It's like because then everything would basically be like wearing a potato sack with no hot tub and like no butter. I don't know, like, right? And I'm like, so I feel like part of what queer people have to do, right, I think is what Tony Kapen-Barr talked about. It's like we have to make the revolution irresistible. I feel like part of our queer brilliance of fashion is to like help make this future irresistible where we all are sharing and being with each other, but like bringing swag and beauty to it, because like we bring swag and beauty to everything and we can make it out of nothing.
And butter.
And butter. We got butter. All right. Is there anyone else? Yes.
So when you talked about like how far do you have to look in the future, I
Yes.
think the thing that came up for me was like it wasn't an amount of time in the way we measure time now.
Yeah.
And I think physical touch and physical pressure are really important for grounding me. So I just had the image of like someone's hand on my heart. like pushing. And it wasn't like a year or 20 years, but it was just like, how long does it take me to like not feel pain there? And I think that like something that happens like when we are at our best in my queer, trans, like people of color communities is like we know how to love each other not on a time limit. Yes. And I think like moving towards something where we can still be healing even when we are there, and know that that is not on a time limit.
I'm just like gasping at the beauty of that. It's so pretty. That was such a pretty thought. Thank you. I love that. I'm like, everyone, let's put our hands on our hearts. Just for a moment. Just for a moment, imagine that. Let that idea in. That it's inevitable that there will be a time when we won't be hurting and we won't be scared. It's inevitable. It's coming. And we'll be safe. And our babies will be safe. I'm here for that. All right, y'all. Y'all are so good at time travel, by the way.
And it's a skill that we all need to learn. So.
It's my favorite ting, and Alexis teaches us. All right, so what we wanted to do is a little bit of Q&A now, because
keep those mics running.
People, often people like that. So, and especially when we're in a university setting, we want to give some room for...
Was that your Black Panther?
That was my Black Panther. Did you?
I did. I heard it.
Because I'm your sister.
So, does anyone have questions, feels, comments, things you'd like to share or like a response to? Yes.
How did you come up with the theme for your podcast? What events led you to actually want to produce it?
That's great.
Well, our podcast has kind of an interesting origin story in that, as has often happened for Adrian and I in our work, we were sort of on a similar path at the same time without necessarily having even realized it, even though we talk to each other all the time. And so...
What's wrong with this?
I don't know. We just don't happen to share everything. So
but we do. We still don't get
we
it.
were both, yeah, I know. It's just we both have really full lives, but basically we were both in a pretty deep consideration of creating a podcast, and been taking steps towards developing a podcast, like individually on very different types of thematic material. And then I think you reached out to me and you were like, wait a minute. Like, you're thinking about this. I'm thinking, let's just do it together. And we knew we wanted to talk about sisterhood. We knew we wanted to talk about movements because both of us have been involved in social justice and movement work for a long time. And we knew we wanted to talk about Octavia Butler and science fiction. Like, that's what we knew. So, and we had our amazing friend and now producer, Zach Rosen, who sat down to record us the first time. Mm-hmm. And we basically used that pilot, what became our pilot episode was the episode where we figured out what is this show going to be, you know? Yeah. But I think that, you know, the conditions also in which we recorded that first episode, you know, we knew that there was something about like the political conditions, the political moment that was influencing us to feel a need to be really directly addressing this question of like, it feels like apocalypse right now, but what does that mean given the fact that like we're all from communities that have survived things far worse than this? So what is so different about this moment right now, you know? Mm-hmm. Although whatever, climate change, we haven't all survived that because it's happening right now. So I think there was that, and then that first episode that we recorded in the wake of leading a healing ceremony together that was at the Allied Media Conference in the wake of the Pulse nightclub shooting. And so I think that was also, you know, that shooting had just happened days before. Yeah. We had just led this healing ritual with a group of people who felt called together to
basically like queer and trans people at the Allied Media Conference.
Exactly. Yeah. So and we basically went from. I remember that we had the ceremonial water jars from the ceremony were full of flowers and water. And I was carrying them in a canvas bag, like strapped across my shoulder and over my womb, just carrying them around for the rest of the day. And I had them with me in the room while we recorded that first episode. Yeah. And then we left Zach's house and we went to the Detroit River and poured the ceremonial water out. And so it just feels like there's a thread here too about grief and like how we mourn together that also has been like a very important through line in the work. That was a long answer.
That was the whole answer. That was
the
great.
Whole answer.
Thank you. Anyone else? You don't have anything to say to us?
Oh, it's just so nerve-wracking. I'm so nervous.
Is it?
Don't be.
All right, just imagine us naked. No, just kidding.
That helps.
Don't do that. Just kidding.
Okay. So that does help, actually. I didn't think that would
Does it help?
It does. Yeah.
Okay.
Looks good. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Do you?
Okay, so I've been thinking a lot about kind of the forces that we're up against in creating these new worlds, right? These new futures. And one of those forces, of course, being time, specifically linear time.
Yes.
Right? I'm glad people brought it up. And how linear time has, often been used as a tool of oppression, right?
Yeah.
To oppress and control and kind of suppress transgenerational power. So, I'm wondering if you could talk about time, specifically how we can bend and destabilize time and resist capitalist time to move us towards the stars.
Heck yes. What's your name? Excellent question, asker.
Caitlin.
Caitlin. What's
Thank
your
you,
name?
Caitlin.
Awesome. Excellent. So, time bending, time deconstruction. I think destabilizing. Right? One of the things I would recommend is, first of all, finding the work of Alexis Pauline Gumbs and like deep diving into it, particularly MArchive. I feel like she's written basically a prophetic text for us that is exactly that. Like, how do we release time and keep wisdom, release time and keep connection, release time and keep narrative. So first that. And then in the practice of facilitation, this has been a place where I've been really playing a lot with how do we bend the time that we have together such that it's enough, even though all the people in here are very convinced that we don't have enough time, right? And are doing a lot of things to sabotage the possibility of us having enough time. So because in capitalism, we are all trained that we only matter if we're too busy to be where we are, right? If we're too important to be where we are, if we can never fully be present because we're so important, because our value is more than this place, right? And as long as we can keep people thinking our value is more than the place, right, then they'll pay more to try to get into it. They'll pay more to get us, right? I had someone tell me that one time, like, if you're not available, people will pay so much to have you. And I was like, but then I wouldn't be there. So I would like to be with, although it has helped, I will say, like, as I've been trying to figure out, like, how can I harness more resources for Black liberation work, it has been interesting to be like, oh, rich and mostly white-led spaces are like, we'll pay a lot, and actually it makes us feel really good to pay a lot of money. That's how we know you're valuable, and then I can redistribute that money. But
you're bending money there.
I'm bending money. I bend money all the time. I'm like, literally I have none, and yet I'm paying the IRS a ton, so somehow.
But wait, so you're suggesting that there's like a way of in those facilitation spaces of basically saying, I'm going to actually draw my value from being fully present right here, right now.
So to me, that's the way you bend time, right? If people are present in time, and if you've ever had this experience, some people, the first time you have this experience is an experience of drugs, right? And so I always laugh about this because I'm like, for me, I think the first time was when I did mushrooms the first time. I did mushrooms. And coming out again. We did mushrooms together in England, Mom. Autumn was a baby, and it was her fault. Okay.
That's not how that works stereotypically.
Actually, it was such a good trip.
That
was
like an amazing
one of my
trip.
favorite experiences we've ever had.
In England.
So, but in that experience of doing mushrooms together, which I highly recommend to all of you, and you're at the right age for it, is that I was suddenly so present. I was in the present moment, and I was so deeply in the present moment that I was like, I can literally see everything. I have time to look at everything. I have time to be here, and this is what matters. And so trying to bring that same level of focus and attention, part of what I'll talk about is miraculous time often. So I'll get a group in the room, and I'm like, listen, at the front of this, I want to say, I recognize that all of you are miraculous beings. I cannot recreate you. I can't recreate your time, and I want you to make sure you're on purpose to be here, that no one made you come here. You're not here by obligation. You're not here because it looks cool to be here. You're not cool because you just need to check it off, but you're here because you're going to die someday, and this is how you want to spend these 5 hours or these 10 hours or these 3 days. And that does help bring people a little bit more present. And then
I'm going to die?
Yes, right? I'm like, that's what we all know is we are we think about universities as temporary spaces, right? People come in, you're trying to evoke some change, and then you're going to go, right? It's just a microcosm of all of life. We come in, we try to learn who the fuck are we, what are we going to do, how much can we change, and then we go. And it's just a slightly longer thing on the really, really long landscape. So the more you can bring people into, be here on purpose. When you're on purpose, that's when you can start to bend and play with time. And then it's like, what really matters in this time? So getting people to stop fronting and bluffing and buffooning and lying in the space, because that just is such a waste of time, and trying to train ourselves to move with precision and to move right to the heart of things. For me, somatics has been a major way of doing this, that I'm like, somatics is a methodology for landing into the practice of wholeness, the whole self. Danielle and I are like part of this community of generative somatics. But for me, that's been a way that I'm like, oh, I have a center, and I can center into what my actual purpose is in being here right now, and what is it I'm supposed to deliver. And when I'm in that place, I also feel like I'm bending time, because I'm no longer, even our method of talking, we can repeat ourselves. Most humans, we train ourselves to repeat ourselves 3 times every time we're talking, because no one fucking listens. And so if we start to practice, like, I'm going to pretend like you're listening. I'm just going to say it once. I'm going to move to the next thought. I've just saved 2/3 of my life, so to me, it's like these kind of things of like, get direct, be on purpose, actually be where you are. And then when you're done being where you are, let it go. So I think that's the other thing, is we cling and we waste a lot of time creating literally a resistance against the pressure of time, instead of being able to be like, I'm in a flow with it. Like, I finished college and now I'm not supposed to stay a student anymore. Now it's time to go to the next thing. Or, I'm supposed to be a student of life, but now it's time to move into co-creating. One last thing I'll say on this is, the less time we spend putting our attention where it doesn't belong, the more we're able to actually bend time and shape where it does belong. So I talk about what we pay attention to grows, but I'm like, we spend a lot of time growing shit that we don't care about, right? Where I'm like, if you don't care about the Kardashians and you hate the Kardashians and you don't really, don't ever talk about them. I also say this to people about Beyonce, right? I'm like, when someone comes and like, I don't know how I feel about Beyonce, I'm like, you don't have to pay any attention to her at all. I can.
I know how I feel.
I will give her all of the attention for all of us. It's fine. She'll be fine, right? She doesn't care what you think. She's literally just living her purpose and flowing and having a great time. She's making great use of her time, right? You should make great use of yours.
I really like that you just let us see how you respond to people who are like, I'm not sure about Beyonce, which is
I just wanted to figure out, where do I slide this in?
I don't have time for that. But
bending time, defending Beyonce. It's like all one.
But one of the things I just wanted to extract from what you just shared, which was so much beauty, is this piece about the role of lying.
Yes.
Because
liars.
Right, we always talk about time is a construct, which means time is a lie.
Yes.
And one of the ways
construct, lie.
Right. And one of the ways that constructs work is by thinking fractally here, that they replicate themselves from the inside.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I'm talking about emergent strategy too.
I was I learned it from watching you.
Right. But that there's a way that people lying in spaces or lying inside relationships helps replicate the idea of time, because it creates more conditions to take it creates the conditions for things to take longer
Yes.
if we can't actually get at what's real. And I mean, I feel like I've seen this repeatedly in my work and in my
Yes.
own relationships, that it's like, oh, had everyone been being honest with each other, then this wouldn't have taken 4 years for us to figure out what actually needed to happen here, right?
Oh my God.
You know?
I feel like the primary thing I do when I'm facilitating is like I'm like, can you tell the truth?
Right.
Or maybe the truth this would be like a good time to
Might
maybe
be a
just say
good
what you
time,
actually
'cause
want.
no one's forcing you to lie.
Yeah, and like the number of times people, and you may have all practiced this, you sit in a meeting, you know exactly what you think. You open your mouth, something else comes out, right? And part of it is like, I don't want to hurt their feelings with the truth, which is that proposal is total bullshit, right?
Right.
That's never going to work. Or
I just disagree.
It's really, or it could be like, I think it's really brilliant and it's smarter than anything I came up with. I feel resentful about that, and so I'm not going to let it go forward.
It's so
All
sad.
right? And I don't know how people would say that, but I do think there's a way to be like feeling insecure. This proposal is making me feel insecure.
I wish I
And
had that idea.
Yeah, I really wish I had that idea. And then just be like, own that. And then let the idea be a good idea, rather than let me go write a new proposal where it's basically that idea with slight shifts, and then I start a new organization.
Oh,
and I
look
try
how
to
much
get
time
funded.
that took.
Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, been time. Great. So we love y'all so much.
Yeah, y'all
we
are
wanna
so
send
beautiful.
A huge shout of thanks to all of you for coming to be with us in person. This is so great. Want to send a huge shout of thanks to our mother, both for coming and also for having us. Yay.
Thank you for birthing us.
And to all the friends in the room that were like looking out and seeing, it's so exciting that y'all came to see us, even though you know us, and you still came to act
And
like
thanks to
didn't
the
think.
organizers. This was so beautiful. Thank you
Yes.
for holding us. All right, good night, y'all.
Thank you so much for listening to our show. We are on Twitter and Instagram at Into the World PC. We're also on Facebook at Into the World Show. You can make a sustaining donation to our show by visiting our page at patreon.com/intotheworldshow. Another incredibly helpful thing you can do to help our show sustain itself is write us a review. Anywhere you're listening to this podcast, write us a review and let folks know, it's good. It's good. And then How to Survive the End of the World is produced and edited by the mother of another father, the father of another mother, the incomparable, the magical parent, Zach Rosen. And music for today's show comes from Tunde Alanaran and Mother Cyborg. Happy Mother's Day. In the spirit of time being nonlinear, in a future episode, Autumn and I are going to decide that we should start leaving you all these little, we ain't done yet bits right at the end of the show, after the credits, for the true listeners who really care. We are inspired by Marvel. So this is me, Adrian, in a bathtub on Mother's Day, just sending you a little something extra. I want to share this bath with you, which smells like rosemary and lavender. I want to share a long drink of cold water with you. And I want to say happy spring. Okay. That's the extra little bit. It's a little spell casting for you and your future relaxation. Ciao now, brown cow.